Kamusta yo fam? I'm Yowawerts and I'm back for a new Ben 10 creation. In this video, I'll be showing you how I made this Ben 10 XLR8 helmet from cardboard and other simple materials. I'll also be sharing with you the embarrassing mistakes I made when making this craft, so you guys should definitely take notes to prevent yourselves from making the same errors. It's been 6 months since my last upload and I'll be explaining to you guys why later in this video, but for now, let's begin crafting. First step I did was making a prototype. Since there isn't any available template for an XLR8 helmet, I made my own from scratch. To work on the base of the helmet, I used a free template that I found online and traced this onto a thin EVA foam. The first step of this craft was one of the hardest thing to do because I honestly didn't know how to copy the exact shape of XLR8's head, but I just kept on moving, cutting, and sticking things together, including this cone made out of paper which I then glued onto the helmet like so, and just worked my way up from there. As you can see, it was 8th of January when I started this craft, but look how it almost took, actually it really reached 1 month for me to finish this due to a lot of reasons, which I'm not proud of, but you'll know these reasons later on the video, so just keep on watching. With hot glue, tin foil, and modeling clay, I was able to form the spike on XLR8's head. Doing this was a bit tricky, but I managed to do so, and although it's not perfect, I'm still glad that it looks close enough to how XLR8 looks on the cartoon series. I then covered most of the areas with food wrapper and then taped everything together. After that, I covered the little helmet with duct tape, sketched some lines, and then traced them with a cutting knife to make the patterns for this creation. I then flattened the pieces and scanned them so I can edit the template on my computer. Using the template I just made, I transferred the patterns on a 5mm thick EVA foam and stick them together to form the shape of the helmet. Earlier in this video, I told you guys that I used cardboard to create this helmet, but actually this craft was supposed to be made out of EVA foam. It was honestly a whole lot easier to assemble than cardboard despite having to reshape some parts of the helmet. However, everything just went downhill when I tried to cover up the seams and holes on the foam. Although I searched on the internet how to seal foam, I wasn't able to prepare all the needed materials such as Plastidip because it's nowhere to be found here in my town, and I looked through online but shipping wasn't available at the time because of Typhoon Odette, so I had to compromise. I asked the internet again if I can use body filler instead since it's the only thing available here, and it said yes, so without doing further research since I was in a rush, I immediately purchased a can of body filler. At first, I didn't even know how to mix body filler right. I kept on mixing it raw or putting too much hardener, but I got the hang of it after a lot of mistakes in a couple of days, so I wasted about 3 days for this step. When I was sanding the body filler, I started to notice that they easily crack when the foam is slightly pressed or bent. Since this helmet is going to be worn, it's definitely going to be flexed and pressed when trying to wear it or taking it off. With this, I know for sure that cracks would even get worse after the paint job, so I decided to stop and not continue applying body filler. I attempted to remove all the body filler I applied onto the helmet, but it was already too late. It was no use because the helmet is already super messed up. I mean, the body filler wasn't even mixed properly, so yeah, it's completely ruined. I didn't lose hope, however, and decided to do it all over again. Fun. As shown earlier, I needed to cut out some pieces and reshape a few parts of the former helmet since the template I made lacked a bit of accuracy. So to finalize the template, I made the former helmet with duct tape and made a new pattern. This way, it'll be easier for you guys to create your own XLR8 helmet since you won't have to make the adjustments yourself. Now, the only thing that you need to do before printing the template is to upscale it or make it smaller, depending on your head size. After editing the template, I printed them out and taped them accordingly. I cut out these pieces using a cutting knife. It doesn't have to be cut out accurately from the outline since these will still be glued onto cardboard. Only then we can precisely cut out these pieces. This cardboard I'm using was bought from a local store. I don't know its exact name, but it's similar to an illustration board that I usually use. Although the template has these lines which sort of indicate that they must be linked with the other lines in the following piece, it's actually fine that they aren't precisely connected since the template itself isn't 100% accurate in terms of these lines. Take it from the person who made the template, as long as you can glue the corners of the pieces fully until their ends, you're fine. So to make them easier to glue and stick together, I gently pressed and bent the pieces accordingly. It's possible to use corrugated cardboard for this craft, but it's important to take note that the corrugation of the cardboard might make the pieces harder to bend and shape. After I stick these pieces together, I then removed the paper template so that I can put more glue onto the cardboard. I then proceeded to making the mask, which was pretty simple to do. Upon gluing the strips, I noticed that the chin piece would go all the way to the opposite side, so I realized that I made another template mistake, but it was immediately fixed. I simply cut off the middle strip and glued what was needed. After that, I glued the corners of the mask and the helmet spike together to complete the right side of the helmet. Next, I printed the mirrored version of the template to make the left side of the helmet and repeated the same steps. Once both sides of the helmet were done, I then glued them together. This part was a bit tricky to do because when I tried to glue the pieces together, the cardboard would go against it, so as you can see here, I had to tape some parts together so that the super glue can clutch both sides without popping out. The bottom part of the spike was really hard to glue, so I bent and folded the cardboard again until it's no longer stubborn. Once it was done, I applied extra glue onto the corners, inside and out, for more durability. To harden this helmet and make it even more durable, I decided to cover up everything with super glue. Okay, I'm just going to share that before I don't really use masks whenever I'm applying super glue, but now I noticed that whenever I inhaled too much of its fumes, the day after or the next days I get a headache or worse, a migraine. So to everyone, protect yourself and please wear the right equipment. There are actually better ways to make this helmet more durable, such as applying resin or fiberglass resin. I watched Sean's Crafts videos and he uses those materials which produce a better result than super glue, so if you guys have the time and resources, I suggest you use those. I did try to find those ingredients here in our town, but unfortunately they weren't available and online shipping is still not available, so I just settled with what I had. I had super glue, so I utilized that. Anyway, it was way faster than using resin, but I know for sure that using those ingredients would have made a whole lot difference. When it dried, I then sanded the entire helmet with an 80 grit sandpaper to roughen the surface and prepare it for the filler, which I'll apply later. Next, I used wood filler to fill in the gaps, smoothen the surface, and try to make the spike of the helmet a bit seamless. Night came and the wood filler finally dried completely, so I went to sand it with 100 grit. At this point, I was really determined to finish as soon as possible because I've already had a lot of drawbacks in making this project, so I worked overtime and sanded until I was satisfied with my work. The next day, I continued on applying wood filler to even out the surface, sanded the helmet, dabbed in wood filler until I ran out, and sanded the helmet again with 800 and then 1000 grit sandpaper. I wasn't fully satisfied yet with what I had because I knew I could still make it more seamless, but since I'm running out of time, I just settled with what I had and decided to paint. I never had any issues using spray paint before because everything always goes the way I want it to be, but this time, however, I was taught a new lesson. As you can see, I just spray painted directly onto the surface within a very close distance, which I would normally do before, but it turns out you aren't supposed to do these things and apply multiple coats while they're still wet. So as a result, bubbles emerged from the surface and they made my work look terrible. Of course, I didn't want to waste all my exerted efforts on smoothing the surface and just settle with those bubbles, so I tried fixing it with sandpaper, as advised by some people on the internet. It wasn't my idea, okay? But it even made things worse, so I was so frustrated, and at this point, gusto ko na lang maging hotdog. But I didn't lose hope, and the next day, I tried fixing it by adding more layers of spray paint, only this time, I observed the correct way of using it, sprayed within the right distance, and patiently waited for the paint to dry before applying a new layer. Somehow, it minimized the visible layers, so I'm really thankful for that. So then I proceeded to coloring the rest of the helmet with black using the new technique I learned, of course, and with that there were no bubbles emerging on this surface anymore, so removing the tape after the spray paint dries is usually the most gratifying moment, but then again, the odds were against my favor as some patches of blue spray paint got removed along with the masking tape. They left some marks, some craters on the surface of the helmet, so I'm thinking the spray paint wasn't able to completely dry. So again, another mistake because I was so impatient. So I tried to fix these errors with acrylic paint, painted all over the craters, but they're still kind of visible, so I just decided to move on and apply clear coat. Later in this video, you will see how I managed to fix that really obvious mark, but before I do that, I first made the pattern on XLR8's face, which kinda looks like a tattoo, using EVA foam. I also cleaned up this part of the eye holes because the color blue was sort of visible and I wanted to make it look neat as possible, so I painted them with black. Now the EVA foam was also painted with black since it was looking kinda dull, and as you can see, painting it improved its looks. Upon making XLR8's mouth, I planned on simply gluing the shape onto the face, but since the marks above the chin were still visible and looked terribly flat, I made up a brilliant idea that would cover up this mistake and even make this helmet look closer to what I had in mind. XLR8's mouth isn't totally leveled with the entire face, so I thought of cutting out this piece of cardboard, cutting this part of the foam, and sticking them together like so to make XLR8's mouth. I then mixed some acrylic paint to match the color of the mask and then applied it onto the new piece I made. While waiting for the paint to dry, I scratched this area of the mask so that when I glue the mouthpiece, it will stick onto the helmet really well. After that, I worked on making XLR8's eyes using this material, which kind of feels like a mosquitero. A few weeks ago, when I was making the foam helmet, I thought of using plastic for XLR8's eyes, but I wasn't successful in my attempts. But I'm glad that happened because the mosquitero is the best option, and I wouldn't have discovered that if I didn't have those failed attempts. Anyway, I cut out the mosquitero and folded it to make 4 layers. This way, the inside of the helmet wouldn't be visible while still allowing the person wearing the helmet to see clearly from the inside. As I glued this inside the mask, I gently pressed the eyes to make it pop out a little instead of just lying flat. After I glued both sides into the helmet, I then placed the mouthpiece with super glue like so.
Searching for greatness in a sea of the dying and shameless, a sea of the aimless. I don't wanna be one of the nameless. I'ma wake up with the mindset that one day I'm gonna make it, and I don't think I'll be fine if I don't break my limitations.
After a long month of making this creation, finally I'm done making this DIY Benton helmet. It looks absolutely great. It's not perfect, of course, but it's close to how XLR8 looks on the cartoon series, which makes me really happy. It took me so much time and effort to make this come to reality that I even garnered a lot of pimples, which is why I'm not removing this helmet as we speak. So I hope you guys like this invention as much as I do. Although I made a lot of crazy mistakes upon making this creation, I'm still kind of glad that they all happened because I learned a lot of lessons which I'm sure will help me make better DIYs in the future. Before we end this video, I'd like to say thank you so much to all of you who have been very patient with me despite my 6 months of inactivity. You guys are the best. You're still here watching my video and subscribe to the channel. I will try to manage myself and my time better so I can upload videos for you guys, since it's kind of hard to manage the university and YouTube at the same time. But like I said, I'll just do my best. So that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and stay safe.
Appreciate all that is vacant. It's just for the taking. If you make up your mind, you can take it. I'm never complacent.